I remember the last time we had a high price cycle and some businesses make some poor decisions about what to do with the profit during those years. And it really came back to bite them in the years that followed.
The cattle market is at an all-time high, which probably means for most of us, we're seeing a pretty healthy profit this year. So the question is, how should we strategically use that profit? Dallas Mount with Ranch Management Consultants returns as we work through this question, starting first at debt.
It's a tool that can be dangerous. I've heard John Haskell say before, it's like a chainsaw. A chainsaw can really help you get some good work done when you need a chainsaw, but boy, you better be careful when you're using it.
We'll also talk about growth, cash flow, investing in yourself, benchmarks, and managing your business with principles versus emotion.
We don't have a magic recipe. I don't know that recipe for you, but I do know principles, and we teach those principles that work.
It's not just about your profit, it's about what you choose to do with it. On this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills, your host. Good to have you joining us on the program here today. And as you heard there in the opening, we have Dallas Mount returning as our guest. I always enjoy the conversations with Dallas and hearing his perspective and take on our subjects that we bring and we talk about. Usually it's something that I've been thinking about in my head, and it's something where I've seen him, whether he's written an article or something's come out, and I'm like, Dallas, I want a little bit more explanation on that, and today's is no different, and I think you're going to enjoy our program here today, so be sure to tune in later on in the show. Speaking of what else is coming up in the show, of course, meteorologist Don Day will be in later on as we talk about our long-range weather, so be sure to tune in later on in the show. Now, before we jump into our subject at hand here today, if you don't have the latest issue of Working Ranch Magazine, it is the summer issue, by the way, you can easily get your subscription started by going to workingranchmag.com, and you'll get the next issue that will be coming out here soon. Or another way you can pick up a copy each and every time a new issue comes out is stop by your local Tractor Supply store. Yeah, and you can pick one right up off the shelf there. In fact, a shout out here today to the Tractor Supply store in Jewett City, Connecticut, in East Syracuse, New York, in Paris, Tennessee, and in Appleton, Wisconsin. When I hear Paris, Tennessee, it makes me think about an old Alan Jackson song. Hey, coming up on the next edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show, tune in if you like talking cattle markets. We're just coming off the heels of the Week in the Rockies sale for Superior Livestock, and pretty good prognosis of what this cattle market's going to look like ahead in 2025. And so if you want to find out the take of that sale and what that looks like going forward, join us on the next edition of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Clint Berry joining us as our guest. Speaking of Working Ranch Radio shows, if you didn't catch last week's show, Amanda Radke joining us on the program as we had a great episode with her talking on land, legacy, and liberty, keeping America fed and free. A great episode. You can go to our podcast site at workingranchradio.com and download it there. Or if you have your own preferred podcast provider, you can do it from there as well. Well, as we turn towards our subject at hand here today, as I said earlier, our guest today is Dallas Mount. He is the CEO and the owner of Ranch Management Consultants. And Dallas, it's good to have you joining us here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Thanks, Justin. Happy to be on.
Well, as always, I always like to visit with you for your thought-provoking type of just analyzation of our ranching business. But the latest profit tips that came down, and we'll get to that in a bit, was entitled Downside of Paying Off Debt. But I guess, as I told you before we started here today, I said I want to kind of go overarching theme was with the record high prices that we're seeing in our industry. And this coming week, this next show, we're going to have Clint Berry on with Superior Livestock to recap the latest Superior sale that, my word, that was amazing to see some of those prices. But there's a lot of money in our business right now. And I think, and I've had you on before, we've talked a little bit about it, but I think we really do need to be strategic about where we move forward in our business with this profit that we're seeing.
100% agreed. Yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years or so, really, I'd say paying attention well the last 20 years. And man, I've never seen numbers like what we're seeing right now in terms of profitability of some of these businesses. But to completely agree, let's be thoughtful about what we do with the profit. I remember the last time we had a high price cycle and And unfortunately, we saw some businesses make some poor decisions about what to do with the profit during those years. And it really came back to bite them in the years that followed. So I think now's a great time to be real strategic about what we do with that profit.
Okay, so then let's jump in and maybe recap a little bit of the last profit tips that kicked out, because there's other things in answering that question. Because my question to you is, okay, so then how should we strategically use that? That's kind of the question I'm over giving you here today as a general question. So the first thing let's hit the debt element of it, because with that, I think that it is strategic, probably would be wise in paying off debt, but we need to be looking and analyzing that as well. And so kind of break that down from your philosophy.
Okay. Yeah. So paying down debt, right? It might be tempting to take that profit and say, oh, let's throw it all against the debt, right? That might be smart for some people. That might be really foolish for other people. So I tell you what the thing that spawned that article is I was, looking at the videos on YouTube one morning, and I watched a Dave Ramsey video, and I really appreciate Dave. He's a great teacher, those things. But here were his people talking about, oh, there's never a downside to paying off debt, right? And I was about ready to pull my hair out, right? Because I'm thinking about some of these businesses I work with, and thinking, oh yes, there can be a big time downside to paying off debt, right? So that's what kind of spawned that article. I think one thing that people don't understand is when you pay down debt, you do not change the net worth position of your business, right? You don't make your business more valuable.
Sure.
You take an asset and you throw it against a liability, right? And if you think about what that balance sheet is, it's assets minus liabilities. So assets. So if I've got $100,000 of cash and I throw it against $100,000 of a liability, right? Assets go down by $100,000, liabilities go down by $100,000, net worth does not change.
Sure.
Okay. So you really don't make your business more valuable. Now, what you can do is that can help improve your cash flow position in the future, right? If you now don't have to make that payment. One mistake we see people make sometimes is they throw that against a portion of the debt. So now they don't have the cash, but they still have the payment.
Sure.
Right. So you haven't actually done much to improve yourself at all there. So I think we need to be careful about just blindly throwing it against the debt. Paying down debt is not always a good thing. What you need to look at, and always in these things around economics, right? The true answer is it depends, right? So one of the things it depends on is it depends on where your business is at financially. What is your net worth, your profitability, relative to the amount of debt you're carrying, right? Some of the agricultural businesses that we work with are carrying a very small amount of debt relative to their net worth. And if they're a highly profitable business, right, they're making a lot of profit to easily service that debt, right? So let's keep that debt working for us, right? Let's use other people's money to do more of the things that we're good at that are highly profitable, right? So we got to look at the balance sheet piece on that. We got to look at tools like debt coverage ratio, right? How good is my business at able to servicing the debt that I'm carrying, right? Am I in a healthy balance there? And so using some of those tools will help give us indicators to say, hey, maybe you should pay off some debt, or actually you're in a really healthy position. Let's keep going. Let's do more of what you're good at.
Yeah. Something that made me think a little bit further in some of this, and you mentioned that in that article too, was, and this is something that you have folks do through your through Ranching for Profit School as well, is doing your cash flow several months ahead. Because one of the things I see with that is, if you have, like right now, operating notes are running at, I don't know, I don't have one right now, so I'm not sure what the rate is right now, but let's say last year they were 7.25%, they were as high as maybe close to 9% a couple of years ago. And then you pay off a note that's 4% and then you put yourself in a pinch where you don't have money and you have to take money out on your line of credit. Probably not real smart.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, like you say, some of our clients have loans that were established years ago when interest rates were very low, and throwing money at paying those off, well, heck, that's almost free money, right? And inflation's probably running at the same rate as some of those interest rates. right? So really you're using other people's money for free in that situation. So let's let that money ride. If we are carrying some higher interest debt, then that could be a different consideration.
Yeah.
But it still goes back to those principles we were talking about.
Yeah. Very good. Anything else on paying off debt? As far as, again, the overarching theme here today is strategically using the profit that we have in our industry. Hopefully a lot of us have that in our industry right now. When it comes to debt, anything else here we need to talk about?
So I just want to encourage people to look at debt as to what it is, right? It's a tool for the right time, for the right purpose. It's a tool that can be dangerous, right? It's I've heard John Haskell say before, it's like a chainsaw, right? A chainsaw can really help you get some good work done when you need a chainsaw, but boy, you better be careful when you're using it. Right. Yeah. So debt's kind of the same thing. It's a useful tool at the time, and we need to raise our skill level on using this tool. You look at some of these great big businesses that we all know of, and these are businesses that have a lot of money, but yet they're using debt to do their business well. Right. And so in agriculture, we can do the same thing. But, we got to be thoughtful about how we're doing it. And then obviously the values of the individual who's the leader and owner of that business come into play, right? Some people using debt goes against their value system, and who am I to say don't follow your values, right? You've got to follow your values and know what those are. But I think sometimes we're told that debt is bad and that debt, all these things, right? And so we have a lot of clients that are extremely debt averse when actually using that debt well can help their business thrive.
Dallas, you mentioned something there, and I want to go to break here in just a bit. But before I do that, can you address how do we increase our skill level in understanding and utilizing debt? What are some things or ways that you would recommend we do that?
I think being able to look at some well put together financial statements and understand what they're telling us. Okay. Right? I mean, let's be honest. A lot of people in agriculture don't enjoy doing it and aren't very good at reading the information that those statements are telling us. And a well put together set of financial statements. What I'm talking about is a one-page profit and loss statement for your business that breaks things out by enterprise, right? What are my cows doing? What are my stockers doing? What's the overhead of my business I need to service? I mean, this can be done fairly simple on one page. It doesn't have to be a lot of numbers and a lot of lines. We could be talking about maybe 20 numbers, right, on some pages to look at. So that page, and then also the second one you need is a well put together balance sheet, right, that shows, okay, where's my money? What's my current assets, my intermediate assets, my long-term, what's the net worth of this business? Those two financial statements really speak a language when you lay them next to each other. So I'd encourage people to develop the competency, the aptitude to lay those two statements side by side and be able to read them and know what it's telling you about your business.
Okay, makes sense. All right, let's take a break here, Dallas. When we come back, again, we're going to continue. The overarching theme here today is how should we strategically use the profit that we see in our business here today? And we're going to continue on with that more when we come back here after the break. This segment today brought to you by RealMax, the tub that pays for itself.
We've done a few manure studies on the RealMax product. On average, we're seeing 51% less undigested feed in cows' manure that have been on RealMax. She's digesting her feed that much better and getting that much more protein and that much more energy out of her feed stock.
Generally figure about 5.5 to 6 acres a pair. Through the drought of 2020, we did 4.5 acres a pair. On ours, still had adequate grass left.
I guess they utilize more of what they eat, so they eat less.
We were actually able to increase the number of cattle that we were running probably by 30% with the same amount of grass.
We had a worse drought this year, worse heat this year. Weaned them a whole month earlier. They weighed at least 100 to 150 pounds more this year, and my cows had pones on them. The only thing different is the RealMax tub.
RealMax, the tub that pays for itself.
To learn more, call 888-386-0699 or online at realmax.net. Welcome back as we continue on. Dallas Mount is my guest today. He is the CEO and the owner of Ranch Management Consultants. Of course, you've probably heard of the Ranching for Profit schools as well, and that's what they do. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show. Dallas, as we continue on here today, we do see a lot of profit in our industry. It's great for folks out there, and talking here today about how we strategically use that profit. We talked about paying down debt in the last section. Now let's talk about some other things here that we could be looking at that. But whenever there's a lot of profit in our industry and a lot of money in our pockets, we can start to think about things, do we expand, or do we buy things? And I want you to kind of break some of that down. And first of all, I think sometimes there's that desire of expanding our business. And how do we analyze that? Is it something we should do? Is it something we shouldn't do? But what would you say to somebody that says, well, I'm thinking about growing my business?
Cool. Yeah, good question. It's fun stuff to talk about. And so let's say I've got a client I'm working with that's looking at, hey, we had a really good year. We're looking at growing the business. Okay, I'm going to say, show me the numbers, right? So we're going to sit down with their profit and loss statement, and we're going to go through it. And I really want to analyze the profitability of this business. I'm going to analyze it looking at today's current prices, and then I'm going to analyze it looking more into the future, right? And if it is highly profitable, if it's going to be profitable at more long-term average prices, then I'm probably going to be right there with it. I'm going to be like, yeah, this thing's rocking, right? Let's expand it. Let's grow it. So first thing I think we want to do is make sure we're growing a business that's working well and that is poised to continue to work well. If sometimes we think we're profitable because we have cash flow, but when we actually look at it, well, actually, if I went out and leased more land, if I hired another employee, if I bought more cows, I'm actually not profitable. Right. So there's a difference between cash flowing well and actually being economically profitable. So we want to make sure we're understanding what we're looking at there. But a business that is economically profitable, I'm all for it. Right. Let's grow this thing. Another thing I would really encourage folks to look at doing with that profit is building a cushion into your business, building some working capital. Yeah. Oftentimes, a lot of the businesses we work with are very lean on working capital. And what I mean by that is, what kind of cash can you put your hands on? And then what kind of expenses do you have in the short term, right? So that's current assets minus current liabilities. So when you do that math, current assets minus current liabilities, what's left over is what we call working capital. That's another way of saying it, that's your runway, right? That's how much cash do I have to pay my bills in maybe a 2, 3, 4 month period, right? How long is your runway? Many of the businesses that we work with don't have a healthy runway, right? They can get their hands on 30 days expenses, right? Yeah. And after 30 days, now we're pulling down the operating note, right? Now we're doing all those things. And to be honest, that's not a very healthy place to be as a business because stuff always goes sideways, right? And when stuff goes sideways, that 30 days of money goes out really quick. So I think a good use for that profit is to build that runway, right? Maybe pay some tax on that money and build yourself up into a stronger working capital position so you can navigate the next curveball that comes your way without having to really be tight.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think for a person from a management standpoint, some real peace of mind. We talked a little bit ago, you talked about Dave Ramsey. Well, that's a principle that's in his teachings as well about having that, isn't it? I mean, that just kind of that buffer zone. It really is.
Dave Ramsey teaches it, and your grandma probably told it to you too, if you were paying attention.
Yeah, it was in a coffee can buried out back.
That's right.
So, okay. So you talk about a business and then you looking at our P&Ls, looking at all those things, you say, okay, you're in a business, looks like it, it's healthy. It would be profitable even when the market's where it's going to be at in 4 to 5, 6 years. So go ahead and expand. But what happens? We read that P&L and it's not.
Yeah. So now it's time to fix it before we grow it. Right. So let's look at this thing. Let's look at actual economic profitability. Let's be real with our numbers looking forward. Okay. We don't like what we're seeing. Okay. So, wow. Good thing we know it now. What a great time to make some changes, right? When we've got a couple good years behind us, we've got some money in the bank, we've got some opportunity. Now is a great time to fix that thing. Right. So that's a good thing to do. So what do you do with some of that money? Maybe you invest in yourself, right? Go to some schools, go to some training, right? Get some continuing education, get some outside eyes looking at your situation and say, hey, I've got some free cash flow this year. let's figure out how to fix this thing so that I'm profitable in the long term. Mm-hmm. So that's a great use of profitability. In fact, investing in oneself is often the best return on investment of anything we can do on the farm or ranch.
I think it's one of the hardest things for guys to try to do, though.
I would agree. We tend to have this paradigm that, I grew up here, I've been doing it for a long time. There's probably not a whole lot left to learn on this thing. And I think that's dead wrong. The more I've been doing this, the more I know that I don't know, right? And I know more that there is to learn. And so once you start down the path of doing good quality continuing education, you really get hungry for it. So I think people need to get out of that shell and getting away from the business. In fact, can be something that people in agriculture are often resistant to doing, right? How many times do you take a week or two away from the business to go work on the business? I bet that's a single digits of people in agriculture that do that. And man, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah. And I think, Dallas, not only is the admittance that maybe there's more things I should be or could be learning, maybe I just don't know when I do it. And that's a tough thing. I find myself sometimes in that mindset too.
Yeah. And that's, to be frank, that's very much a self-employed mindset, right? If you can't get away from your business and have time to go work on it, that's a big problem. Right. And that's kind of that self-employed mindset of, well, boy, my business needs me to run. And I really want to challenge people to move away from that self-employed mindset and more of the business owner mindset of, hey, this thing needs to run without me. Right. Yeah, that's when you have a good business, is when you can be gone and things work just as well as when you're there. Now you've got a cool business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, Dallas, while we're here, I want to go back a little bit because we were talking about if a business P&Ls aren't matching up and doesn't show that it's your business plan or how you've been doing things is going to facilitate growth of any kind. And I think whether we're in that stage or even if we're in a business that's expansion, one of the things, and you talked about it, just kind of hit on it briefly there, and that is getting out to where you're planning and maybe looking ahead 2 to 4, 5, maybe 5 at the most years out, and looking at that and what your business would be shaped like based upon that.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we talk to folks a lot about is most people are tempted to just do last year's numbers, right? And doing last year's numbers is like trying to drive down the road looking only through the rearview mirror. Right. We really want to be looking forward in time. Now, obviously that would be doing this coming year's numbers, but as you hit, that's going to be doing those numbers out in front of you. Along with that deployment of profit as you do that is sometimes it's very tempting to do things that make our lives easier in the short term with that profit. But as we look at some of those things, they might not actually make our business stronger in the long term. Okay, so I'm thinking about what tends to happen. What probably most of your neighbors are going to do with this profitable year is they're probably going to upgrade some machinery, right? They might do some deferred maintenance on the place. And many of these things might make their life easier, it might make their ranch easier to run, but they're probably not going to make it more profitable in the long term. Now, some of those things could be, right, adding some new water points, adding some better cross fencing so we can better control grazing. I'm all in on those things, right? But buying machines that really maybe the business is already over machined, right? And there's a healthy relationship of what's your gross revenue to how much machinery you're trying to carry. And oftentimes we have businesses, well, this business has already got way too many machines and now we're adding more, we're upgrading more, right? And that might be nice to do in the short term, but it's probably going to create a profitability problem for you in the long run. Now, I'm all for machines that increase profit, right? If we need to buy a machine that's going to help us do something that's going to increase cash flow and make us more profitable, I'm all for that. I'm not against machines, but I do see a lot of situations in agriculture where we're really just adding convenience and comfort that really don't make the business more profitable.
Yeah. That's kind of a sensitive subject.
Well, good. I hope I make people uncomfortable. That's my job.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a break here, Dallas. When we come back, I want to come back into that just a little bit, and I want to talk about why I feel it's sensitive a bit for folks, and we'll continue on talking about that, okay?
Sounds good.
This segment today brought to you by the American Gelbvieh Association. Meet modern industry demands for feedlots and carcass traits with Gelbvieh and Balancer Genetics. Find out more at gelbvieh.org.
Capitalize on crossbreeding with Gelbvieh and Balancer bulls. Raise replacement females with added fertility, increased longevity, and greater productivity. Gelbvieh and Balancer influence females wean more pounds of calf per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer influenced cattle offer increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and have excellent carcass merit. Balancers add the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. This year, make your crossbreeding count with Gelbvieh and Balancer genetics.
This year, choose to unlock the full potential of your cattle operation with K-Line Irrigation, the affordable and dynamic solution for grass-based livestock operations. Beat drought by planning ahead with the most user-friendly irrigation system. K-Line systems ensure optimal water distribution across all acres and are unencumbered by obstacles such as fence lines or steep terrain. Don't miss out on untapped pasture potential. Choose K-Line to secure the future of your grazing operation. For more information, visit our website at www.k-linena.com. Be sure to fill out a consultation form so our designers can create an estimate for your project. K-Line Irrigation, for greener, more productive pastures anywhere.
All right, Dallas, when we left here after the break, you were talking a little bit about, the temptation when we do have a lot of profit in our industry to buy up things. And I think people need to be very understanding what you were clear in the point that, if it brings profit to our bottom line and to our business, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But the conflict that I see sometimes, and I've seen it in my own business, is I'm like, when the calf prices were what they were about 5 years ago, there wasn't a lot of money to upgrade the old feed pickup that was on its last leg, or there wasn't, those kinds of profits to put back into the business. Now there is. So how do we justify when we can, when we shouldn't?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I totally get it. That list of things to upgrade, to improve, those deferred maintenance items on just about any ranch, that's really a never-ending list, right? I mean, I think you could go on and on that. So what I would say is we need to look at some indicators for what is healthy for the size of business we are, right? And without trying to get into too many details today, there are some ratios, some relationships to, okay, this is the gross income my business produces. This is what a healthy business spends on machinery and equipment, right? Here's the size of my business. This is how many employees a business this size can healthy support, right? So I think we need to go back and check in on some of those things. And if we're hitting those ratios, if we're under those ratios, by all means, right? We need to keep our key people, get the right tools in front of them so they can do their job well, so that they have quality of life. But at the same time, we have to manage that expectation to just say more is not always better, right? And I think another thing that goes along with that is thinking about the next stage of your business. Oftentimes I see successful people that have built and grown an amazing ranch, and now we're in a position where we can have a lot more of those things that make ranching easier and more doable. And then they want the next generation to follow them, and they want to say, here's all the stuff that I have to ranch. Now you have to pay all the repair and maintenance on that stuff. and a younger person that's starting out from a different financial position probably can't justify those things, right? And so now we could actually be passing on a burden to that person that's following us to now do all the repair and maintenance on this stuff that we could afford because of our financial position, but it is not reasonable for them as somebody starting out. Yeah. So I think be cognizant of those as well. Yeah.
Dallas, you mentioned about kind of the benchmarks that we could be looking at for businesses. Where would people find those kinds of numbers or that kind of data?
Sure. So it's, if I were just to tell you the benchmarks, they wouldn't make a whole lot of sense until you understand the language that we're talking, right? So, so ranching for profit, we use terms like gross product, gross margin, and we have very specific ways that we go and figure those out. So they generally don't dovetail very well with maybe how your accountant's done it or how, the person you've worked in town with. So you really couldn't plop our numbers into that system.
Correct.
So the way to do it is to come to a school. We've got some materials out there online that you can dive into and kind of start learning a bit about it. There's a few books, a couple of books on our website that you can order that go through it. But to be honest, the way to learn to do it is to come to a school. We've recently retooled some of the curriculum in our school to make it more hands-on and more applied. What we're doing now is when you leave the school, you'll have worked through 4 different example ranches, having looked at their profit and loss statement, looked at their balance sheet, done the calculations on how to determine these ratios, and then done some interpretation of those ratios for, okay, what does this mean? What is this telling me? Where are the problem areas? Where's this business doing well? And then I think the fun part is when you're looking at one of these example ranches and I say, okay, so there's the problem areas, now fix it. Right. And now you can go to work saying, okay, well, we're going to change this and we're going to do this. And so you develop the competency to speak that language and to read those financial statements. And then you apply that to your own numbers and your own business. And now you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah. And I can tell you, Dallas, from my own personal experience, I'm able to see those benchmark numbers because of, I've went through the school and I understand that kind of stuff. And those numbers are kind of brutal sometimes. And it does, especially if you're on the side where your benchmark's supposed to be at, maybe 18% and you're at 38%. And you think, oh my word, that's where we really got to analyze the business. But Dallas, whether it's ranching business, whether you're in selling widgets and gadgets, or whether you're whatever else, every business has some benchmarks. And I think that is, for us as ranch managers, which we are, whether we're the owner or not, or leaser or whatever that may be, that's the stuff that's going to help us go to the next level.
100%. And it's interesting. I've really enjoyed we're doing some analysis on our benchmarks. So I've actually been pulling out benchmarks from other industries and looking at, these, okay, manufacturing is here. How do those line up to our benchmarks that we've been using at Ranching for Profit? And it's really amazing how our benchmarks actually dovetail very well with certain similar industries. And so, yeah, I think it's cool stuff. I mean, this is what businesses do is they dive into their numbers and they see, okay, what's working well, what's not, how do we fix it? How do we make this thing better for the next 5 years?
And I think, Dallas, and this is something I'm sure you hear often, but my ranch isn't like everybody else's. How often do you hear that?
I've never heard that. You're the first, Justin. Well, there's a lot of truth to it, and I appreciate that. And the more years I've been doing this, the more I appreciate that. Your goals as an owner are different from the person right down the road from you. The work you want to do on a daily basis, maybe they're super excited about managing grass very intensively. Maybe you're more interested in managing genetics and lines of cattle and things like that, right? So we've all got our different skill sets. We've all got different goals, aspirations. Grasses are different. Rainfall patterns are different. Markets are different, right? All these kind of things. So what we do is we take everybody where they're at and we put the principles that we know work in front of those folks. And we say, okay, here's a principle that's true. Now, how does that apply to your situation, your mission, your environment, right? And then we let that person wrestle with that and figure that out for themselves. So we don't have a magic recipe, right? I don't have a recipe I can hand you and say, hey, run this kind of cow, calving this season, wean them at this point. I don't know that recipe for you, but I do know principles, and we teach those principles that work across the world. We've been teaching these schools now on multiple continents, and the people, when we go over there, they say these things are true here too. Yeah. So,
yeah. And I think, Dallas, to tie back into our overarching theme here today of how should we strategically use our profit, the principles can guide that. And that's what I see is it takes some of the emotion out of the decisions, and we lay that up against a principle, and then that helps us make that next plan for going forward.
I completely agree.
All right, Dallas, I want to take a break here. When we come back, I want to continue on a little bit more with you. I know there's some things that are transpiring within your company. I want to talk a little bit about that. I know you're down in Nebraska right now at the Young Adults Ranching for Profit that's taking place. I want to talk a little bit about that. It's been going on for a few years now, and just what all's going on with your business as well. So we'll get to that when we come back.
Sounds good.
This segment today brought to you by K-Line Irrigation, a cost-effective, adaptive irrigation solution designed specifically with the grass-based livestock producer in mind. Find out more at k-linena.com. When it comes to building fence, driving those steel posts can be exhausting and absolutely backbreaking. But there is another way you could be doing this. Now, I'm not talking about those bulky and expensive gas-powered or hydraulic pounders. What I'm talking about is the Man Saver Post Driver. Yeah, it's called the Man Saver Post Driver by Roar Manufacturing. This is a portable, lightweight, easy-to-use post driver that runs off of any small air compressor and is 100% made in the USA. The Man Saver Post Driver comes in a variety of models, from driving posts ranging from vineyard stakes to T-posts and all the way up to 3.5-inch diameter posts. While it may be called the Man Saver Post Driver, shoot, I've heard some go as far as calling it the Marriage Saver Post Driver. But take a look for yourself. See it in action when you go to their website at roarmfg.com. That's ROHRERMFG.com. Or if you want to talk to a real person, give them a call at 800-980-7599. The Man Saver Post Driver, the portable, lightweight, and easy-to-use pneumatic post driver where the name speaks for itself. As we continue on, Dallas Mount is joining us here today. Dallas, a good discussion here. I'll have you maybe summarize again towards the tail end here, but I do want to visit a little bit about, as we were talking a bit about the schools and the benchmarks that we can use in our business to kind of know and rate ourselves where we're at and where we can go moving forward in this as we try to work through our ranching business. Some changes going on there. I went to school a couple times when it was 7 days. Now it looks like you made some modifications to it at 6 days now. Kind of explain what's going on there.
Sure. Yeah. So we've been working on this for a couple years now as a teaching team. As you know, we hear a lot of feedback that, time is money, and can we shorten this thing up? And so we've looked at that. We've gotten a bit tighter on how we teach some of those things. We've lessened some things, and we've actually added some more things that we think are important. But we've been able to shrink the school from 7 days to 6 days. We feel really confident about the product that we have as a 6-day school, and just recognizing people are busy. It's hard to get away, so we want to honor that time.
Yeah. Do we still talk about the Oblimes?
Yes, we still talk about the Oblimes. They're still trying to sort it out. It's been 40 years now.
Okay. All right. So again, tying back to our subject here today of strategically utilizing profit, one of the things you talked about that you're unveiling is a dashboard to analyze ranch health. And I think when we look at strategically, one of the things we were talking about is what can or can't our business do? So talk about what you're unveiling here with your dashboard regarding ranch health.
Sure. Yeah, we're really excited about this. So we've got these 6 key business metrics that we teach in the school of how they work and how to look at. And one of the things we've never had is a really nice visual way to display them. So we're getting ready to unroll this dashboard, which is, it's full of speedometer gauges, right? So as your needle goes up, and we've color coded these from red, oh man, it's bad, to yellow, okay, caution, to hey, green, I'm in the green on this. So it's a dashboard that when you put your numbers in for your business, these gauges pop right up there and let you know how it looks. And then more importantly, underneath each of those things is a 5-year trend monitor. Okay. Right. So it might be less important where you are now, but more important, am I getting better or am I getting worse? Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's what I'm really excited about is, you can take these numbers now, throw them in that dashboard, and you could put them in front of a 7-year-old, and they're probably going to be able to tell you, hey, this is a problem. We need to work on this. Or, you could look at one and say, okay, this isn't where we want it to be, but look here over the last 3 years, we're making significant improvements. So we're on the right track.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's interesting as you said the word trends. That was a thought that came to my head earlier today when I was thinking about just having this conversation with you. I think we sort of talk a little bit about it when we say benchmarks, but I think just understanding trends, not only in our business, but in the industry as well. And it starts with understanding the trend in our business. So I think that information is going to be extremely helpful and valuable for folks really addressing some of the things we talked about here today. So real quick, you've been doing the young adult ranching for profit schools for what, 3 years? I'm not sure how many years, a few years now.
We might be coming on 5 years.
Oh, yeah. Really? Okay. Well, I'm kind of been sleeping for part of the year. So who's that targeted for? When you say young adults, what you're thinking there?
18 to 25-year-olds.
Okay.
So when we got the company, my wife, I said to her, hey, what are you excited about in this? And she said, I'd really love to get in front of those young people who are at a very impressionable age and making some decisions that are really setting up their foundation for their future. And so we really targeted that 18 to 25-year-old group. And, we're not giving them the full blown 6-day intense ranching for profit. We are giving them some of the key principles out of that. But the way we've been doing these classes is they're a half day in the classroom and then a half a day outside with a ranch family that's implementing the principles, learning from them, how's it going, getting our hands in the grass, looking at pastures, looking at cattle, talking with real people out there about how it's going. And man, these are so much fun. We're on the tail end of one now here out in the eastern side of the Sandhills in Nebraska. This will be our third one our company's put on this season. We've done one in South Dakota, done one in Wyoming, Montana. We've got a amazing crew here. We got about 35 young adults that are here with us these last 4 days, and just watching these folks network with each other, watching them make new connections, asking difficult questions of the ranchers, making the ranchers squirm a little bit that are hosting us. That's always fun.
Yeah, very good. Well, Dallas, as always, I appreciate your input on what we talked about, because you're doing it not only, I know you ranch as well, you run a few cattle yourself, you've been doing that for several years, but you're applying some of these principles in your own business as well with ranch management consultants. But as we tail out here today, and again, our overarching theme was, how do we strategically use the profit in our industry? Just some final comments from you.
Yeah, I love the conversation we had. Want to challenge people to be thoughtful. These are some amazing times, some great times in some ways. They bring their own unique challenges. I always remember the old guy that would say, the cure for high prices is high prices, right? So I think we all need to recognize that we are in a short-term bubble here, and the area is going to come out of this. So let's use this time to prepare ourselves and our businesses for that next downturn.
You bet. All right. Well, Dallas, good to visit with you again here on the program. I always enjoy the conversation, not only because what I get to hear, but then I get to ruminate on it later on and think about it. So always thought-provoking what you share with us. Glad to have you back.
You're welcome, Justin. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for what you do.
You bet. Dallas Mount, our guest here today, CEO and owner of Ranch Management Consultants. And there towards the end, we were talking about their schools that they have going on, the other things with their dashboard on ranch health, and a variety of other things, the young adult ranching for profit schools. If you'd like to find out more information, go to their website at ranchingforprofit.com. That's ranchingforprofit.com. Stay with us. When we come back, meteorologist Don Day steps in as we take a look at the long-range weather.
Fascinated by our wild weather? Now you can learn, appreciate, and understand the weather in your own backyard with the new Tropo Rain Gauge. Having achieved the highest rating of any product reviewed by the weatherstationexperts.com, the Tropo boasts rugged durability, impeccable accuracy, and precision to the 100th of an inch. Visit measurerain.com to order a Tropo today and use code RAINDAY, that's RAINDAY, for free shipping and 10% off. Go to measurerain.com.
And joining us now with a look at our long-term weather is meteorologist Don Day. And Don, as we look ahead into this next week, we're in the month of July, but talk about a little bit of every kind of weather you can almost imagine, to the point of really some cold temperatures to very extreme hot temperatures across the entire country.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting weather pattern, because we're going to take the summer heat and we're going to split it in two. Right down the middle part of the nation this week, we're going to see a really strong cold front for July come out of north central Canada and slice its way into the northern Rockies and then the northern plains and then into the central plains of the United States. So down the middle of the U.S., we're going to see this big cool down, but it's going to get really hot on the western side of the North America, California, the Pacific Northwest, the desert Southwest, and then also the northeastern parts of the United States will be very warm. So what you're going to have is the West Coast and East Coast hot, the middle of the country cold. So all you'll hear about on the news is how hot it is.
Yeah.
But the middle part of the country is going to see temperatures in some locations 20 to 30 degrees below average. So for the middle of July, that's not very cold, but it's significant nonetheless.
Yeah, pretty significant for that time of the year. So as we look at this, anything out of the abnormal elements of the pattern that we're seeing that's kind of just the talk amongst you and your team?
Well, you don't see this very often to where you get a front of this magnitude. And it's just not this front. We had a front late last week that was fairly significant, and there might even be another cold front after this one. When you look at the calendar and you're in the second and third weeks of July, usually you have the summer pattern established. And I'll have to say this, there were some computer models that were seasonally forecasting the summer that are just going to completely crash and burn. There's really only one model that was hinting that this could happen, and that was the Canadian model, which doesn't always get it right either. But I have to say, it accurately predicted the deep monsoonal moisture, which played a role in the tragedy in Texas and then the flash flood later in New Mexico. It also predicted that the nation's midsection would see these cold shots. So we're going to be paying very close attention to that model here as we go through the rest of the summer and into early fall.
Are you feeling like that's what we're going to continue to see as we finish out the month of July, of just kind of this? I mean, really, it's like not just like this slow wave of changes in weather, but very dramatic changes.
Yeah, I think that there is a strong likelihood that the last week of July and into August, we will get into less in the way of ups and downs. Mm-hmm. And we'll get more into a more, let's say, traditional summer pattern. And there's ample opportunity for some hot weather to come back into the northern plains and central United States after these cool snaps. But we're probably going to go through all of the month of July before that really develops. And then you're looking at the last month of summer. You know, we can certainly be hot into September, but by then we're already starting to change things. So this is definitely throwing a wrench into a lot of the summertime patterns that were expected that have not come to fruition. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of severe weather this spring and into early summer, especially with the flash flooding. It's been a hail-filled year for a lot of people, especially in the central and northern plains. And that is something that this cold front will likely produce more of, as severe weather is going to be likely as this cold front travels across the central part of the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Don, when I look at the drought monitor map, we definitely still see some red areas down into the southwest part of the country. And even when you look, some dry spots into Nebraska and southern South Dakota, and then, of course, the West Coast just in general is a little drier than normal. But that's where some of this moisture, this monsoonal moisture, has really targeted here probably in the last week and a half, and it should start to help that a little bit, but there's some areas still dry.
Yeah, I think you're going to continue to see more erosion of the drought in South Dakota and Nebraska, and maybe even parts of North Dakota's western areas, and maybe eastern Montana, because these cold fronts will produce some good moisture up there. We're hoping that the subtropical monsoonal moisture flow gets back into Arizona and western New Mexico and in the Four Corners region. You know, over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of rain in some parts of the southwest United States, but it hasn't fallen evenly. There's been pockets that really didn't get much or anything, especially that Four Corners area, southwest Colorado, northwest New Mexico, southern Utah, kind of saw that first big monsoonal moisture surge miss them, while southern Arizona, the rim mountain country of Arizona did well. So yes, the drought monitor still has a lot of red on it, but also I'm cautiously optimistic parts of the southwest United States will get back into those good rain-producing thunderstorms as well.
All right, Don. Okay, well, appreciate it, and I look forward to visiting with you next week.
Wear a hoodie.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Thanks. And if you want to follow along with meteorologist Don Day each and every morning through his daily video podcast, you can go to his website at dayweather.com and find a link to his YouTube channel. Hey, as we are finding ourselves smack dab in the middle of summertime, no doubt for a lot of us, we have cattle out on pasture. And one of the things we're always keeping track of is what is going on with the water situation. And if you want an easy way to do that and a simple way that will keep you from running the wheels off your side-by-side or your pickup, how about checking out a remote water monitoring system from Tank Toad? You can find out all the information you'd like to. Go to their website at tanktoad.com. But it's what we've been using using here on our ranching operations for several years now. I can keep an eye on my cistern tank, know what the level is on that tank, know if I'm losing a lot of water out over a short period of time as well, to know maybe I got a float off somewhere, whatever that might be. There's a lot of ways to use that with the daily text messages that'll keep you informed of what's going on with your water supply, whether you want to keep track of your cistern tanks, maybe it's a stock water tank somewhere, a lot of different ways that can be used. They also have well controllers, generators, tank monitors, so much more. If you want to find out more, do what we do here on the X-Ring Ranch. Use Tank Toad. Call Metal Solutions today at 801-252-6135. Or again, their website is tanktoad.com.
This year, choose to unlock the full potential of your cattle operation with K-Line Irrigation, the affordable and dynamic solution for grass-based livestock operations. Beat drought by planning ahead with the most user-friendly irrigation system. K-Line systems ensure optimal water distribution across all acres and are unencumbered by obstacles such as fence lines or steep terrain. Don't miss out on untapped pasture potential. Choose K-Line to secure the future of your grazing operation. For more information, visit our website at www.k-linena.com. Be sure to fill out a consultation form so our designers can create an estimate for your project. K-Line Irrigation, for greener, more productive pastures anywhere.
When it comes to building fence, driving those steel posts can be exhausting and absolutely backbreaking. But there is another way you could be doing this. Now, I'm not talking about those bulky and expensive gas-powered or hydraulic pounders. What I'm talking about is the Man Saver Post Driver. Yeah, it's called the Man Saver Post Driver by Roar Manufacturing. This is a portable, lightweight, easy-to-use post driver that runs off of any small air compressor and is 100% made in the USA. The Man Saver Post Driver comes in a variety of models, from driving posts ranging from vineyard stakes to T-posts and all the way up to 3.5-inch diameter posts. While it may be called the Man Saver Post Driver, shoot, I've heard some go as far as calling it the Marriage Saver Post Driver. But take a look for yourself. See it in action when you go to their website at roarmfg.com. That's ROHRERMFG.com. Or if you want to talk to a real person, give them a call at 800-980-7599. The Man Saver Post Driver, the portable, lightweight, and easy-to-use pneumatic post driver where the name speaks for itself. Hey, before we head out here today, just want to again remind you, earlier in the show, as of course our guest this week was Dallas Mount with Ranch Management Consultants. He was talking about a new tool that they have coming out called a dashboard that will allow you to put in different numbers and then tell you kind of where you're at, where the things are good, where the things you need to be kind of watching a little bit, and where things are real bad. And I think it really does tie in really nicely with what we were talking about here today, because I think it'll allow us, before we start taking some of that extra money that's in our pockets and putting it somewhere else, maybe we do those kinds of things similar to kind of what we talked about, really analyzing our P&L, looking at that, utilizing tools like what they've got here coming up with their dashboard, and being able to then strategically plan moving forward, not just for this remaining part of this year, but also for future years as well. So I thought it was just interesting. I think it's going to be a very good tool. I'm looking forward to taking a look at it myself. Hey, don't forget to tune in next week. Clint Berry with Superior Livestock will be joining us, as we're just coming off the heels of the recent Week of the Rockies sale for Superior Livestock. Numbers we've never seen in our industry before. What does that mean going forward? What does that mean for you if you've yet to market your calves? We're going to talk about all of those numbers. We'll even look at some of this region by region as well. So be sure to tune in next week on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Hey, if you want to get a hold of me, my email address is justin.workingranch@gmail.com. Thank you to our sponsors here today of the Working Ranch Radio Show: the American Gelbvieh Association, Rio Max, the tub that pays for itself, Man Saver Post Driver by Roar Manufacturing, K-Line Irrigation, and Tank Toad, your remote water monitoring system. The Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. I'm Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.